Hi guys, this is Ryan here for the XPDLA Season 8 Justice Division Power Rankings. I'm joined here today with two co-hosts, so they can introduce themselves.
Hey guys, I'm Hunter. Most of you guys know me as Archery. What's poppin'?
And it's your boy Destiny. You already know. Yeah, looking out for your granny.
Yeah, the actual mod here is looking out for your granny, everyone. All right, moving on to the power ranking. So how we kind of rank the squads, versatility was a really big thing. We look at speed tiers and your speed control options. Those are two things that I know a lot of folks last time had questions about. Just so that you know, the reason speed tiers and speed control are so important is that turn order is huge, and having as many options as available as to you as you can to handle those things is good. Type synergies, obviously. Overall, just viability, like how well do we think this will perform based on personal experiences, and what kind of type weaknesses do you have, especially to common offensive types like ground types, rock types, ice types, those kind of mods those kind of coverage options that usually are pretty strong. Another thing I should be clear about with PRs is that they are not an indication of how well the coach will do for the whole run of the season. I've seen coaches ranked 16 of 16 in the PRs have an amazing season and carry themselves super hard. But I've also seen the reverse be true, where I've had seasons where I've laid out my PRs and they lined up pretty well exactly with what I said. This is more so just to get you thinking about your team and the other teams that you're going to be playing against, to give you an idea of maybe things to adjust with transactions, and give you an idea of maybe what to anticipate from your opponents, and maybe to help capitalize on the strengths and weaknesses of your team or your opponent's team. Anyone have anything to add?
Nope, you covered all the good stuff.
All right, let's get moving. So, at number 12, we have the California Chanseys, which is coached by HuskyPenguin. I'm going to go ahead and let Hunter take this one.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I just want to wait. Okay, another thing too. I just want to reiterate one thing. This is not based on the coach's skill. Like, we know Husky is a fine player. It's just there are a lot of really good teams. So there are going to be some teams that are good at the bottom of these rankings. I just want to preface that. I think that's a very important thing to preface.
Especially as we go, there are a couple teams in like the top half of this that would be top 5 in most other draft leagues I've been in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's just get right into this. So this is Husky's team. Glastrier, Bronzong, Jellicent, Amoonguss, Porygon, Mimikyu, Scrafty, Charizard, G-Max, and Whimsicott. Just going through the pros and cons a little bit. Ice Horse, very good pro. One of the most dominant Pokemon in Draft League, specifically Series 9, I think. If you have a really good comp around it, it's very, very dominant. I have a lot of experience with it myself. I know it's a very good Pokemon. Very consistent Trick Room setters. I think Bronzong, Jellicent, and Mimikyu are all very consistent. Also, I mean, there's Porygon there too, but Porygon is more niche than the other ones, I think. Bronzong, the policy on Glastrier, I'm assuming you meant with Rock Tomb, which is pretty cool. And then the Mimikyu for the policy procs also. Sunmoon with the Charizard and Whimsicott's pretty cool. I would have liked to see a more consistent Sunsetter other than Whimsicott, but Torkoal would have fit very, very nicely on this team, I think.
Torkoal would have been amazing on this comp.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, with the point system, it's kind of hard to fit in everything you want sometimes. So either way, let's get right into the cons. Very, very weak to max Rockfall, 100%. I mean, he has almost no switch in, especially with two of his biggest threats, Glastrier and Charizard, being extremely weak to Rock. Rock Slide, max Rockfall, etc. One thing that I think we can all pretty much agree on is this team has way too many Trick Room setters and not three offensive modes. Basically, what this means is no offense, all Trick Room setters. Well, I don't want to say no offense, but the offense, it's very lacking in the offense department. He's actually made transactions since then. This is a little bit outdated because we kind of had a little bit of time crunch. We couldn't really line anything up with our schedule, so this is a little bit later than we would have liked. So he actually made great transactions to fix this. But as it stands, he's at 12 with this just because too many Trick Room setters, not much offense there. Too much support, kind of goes back to what I said. Overly relying on the Charizard, specifically for the fast mode. That's pretty much his only fast mode option. I mean, Mimikyu is an option, but I mean, his fast mode's very predictable. In the Trick Room, you don't really have much offense under Trick Room, except for maybe Glastrier, and then maybe like an offensive Jellicent or Scrafty. Maybe Mimikyu. It's just not as consistent. Another thing that I really thought was a big con here was the Rage Powder redirection. Like, okay, so it's fine, right? Because it's forcing your opponent to use the safety goggles to try and get past your redirection. But when you have a lot of weaknesses, such as Rock or Dark specifically, it's very, very suspect. That's the perfect word. It's right on the screen. It's very suspect to have Rage Powder redirection with this kind of stuff. I would have really liked to see maybe something like Indeedee or one of the Cliffs, or maybe even like Togepi, which was a low tier pick. I really would have liked to see a little bit more of a consistent redirection option.
Yeah, follow me, user.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of Rage Powder. So, what do you guys think about this thing?
Yeah, I'm like right.
Okay, Destiny, do you have anything else? Sorry, you kind of cut it out for me anyway.
Yeah, me too.
Oh no. Go ahead.
Okay. One thing I want to talk about is non-complementary offense mode. So this team is Trick Room with a Sun mode, but it's not really a Sunroom team. Which that's kind of a classic archetype where you have Torkoal in your composition. So that way your team works both in Sun with a fast mode and also has that Trick Room mode, and Torkoal kind of is the glue that binds those together. Since that glue isn't here, you see that the only way Charizard can ever really come out is if Whimsicott sets Sun for it, and then you lead it, and then you just die to Rockfall, which your Glastrier is also weak to. So, like, the problem is that the offensive modes don't complement each other. They don't really synergize super well. I do want to comment, because Hunter talked about the transactions, where they picked up, I think it was, like, Togetic, Dracovish, and some other stuff. I remember I glanced at those transactions. They were super, super good. It would have bumped this team from 12th to, I would say, as high as maybe 6th.
Yeah,
because Glastrier is that strong, and you still have that Bronzong Jellicent, which is really good. And when you complement that fast mode with something like a Dracovish, and something that actually abuses your sand weakness, where you can just run that as you need to, or you can have that Tailwind Whimsicott mode now going with a Charizard and a Dracovish. I really like how that expanded the team, and the Follow Me was really good to get the Trick Room up more consistently. And offensive Bronzong and Jellicent are fine with a Shadow Sneak proc off Mimikyu, so that bumps the team a lot in my book. So just so that Husky knows, like, yes, you're 12th on the PRs that we have here because of your initial team, but with the changes you've made, I mean, we didn't readjust our scores, but that would have bumped quite a bit. Another thing I want to talk about is on the bottom left corner, you'll see total average. All three of us wrote down different PRs. So because of that, the average scores will vary a bit. Sometimes we had disagreements, and there's actually one tie on the list, which we'll kind of get into as we go. But I just wanted to make sure that was being discussed.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Thanos Whales, coached by Faye. I can go ahead and take this one. So this team has some really, really strong offensive pieces. Rillaboom, Spectrier, Zapdos G, Finny, the Crocodile, Reuniclus, Xurkitree. Really solid. Those are all amazing. Like, everything I just listed is a great max option. I like the Crook pick on this team quite a bit. It kind of rounds out some of the typings, and the bulk is actually very high on this team. I mean, you got Rillaboom's pretty bulky, Tapu Finney's bulky, Zapdos G is surprisingly bulky. I think people sleep on its bulk a lot of the time. And that's kind of what my issue with this team was. It felt like that was all this team had, was those pieces, but they don't super work well together. So Purloin's the only dedicated support mon on this team. I mean, you have Trick Room Copycat and the Fake Out and stuff, and Purloin's super budget at 5 points, don't get me wrong, but like, this team does not have enough supportive pieces in my mind at the moment. Sure, you can run a Spectrier and a Tapu Fini support in draft, but typically they're not going to be as good. Another thing I don't love about this is dual terrain. I've seen, at this point, I've done a ton of draft leagues and looked at a ton of different draft leagues in my time. I've seen several people do Finny, Rillaboom dual terrain. It never works that well. The reason it doesn't is because you really just need grassy terrain up for Rillaboom at all times. And
Mhm,
a lot of the time I'll see people do stuff like they'll switch in their Finny and the terrain will shift. And it's easy to think, well, I won't do that. But like, the problem is that Finny makes up part of your Firewater Grass core. So you actually need to
Right.
do that. You need to switch in Finny a lot of the time and do a lot of big hits. There's also no terrain abusers, which I thought was weird. I mean, sure, you can slap a seed on any of these, especially Zapdos. G's pretty good with like a Psychic Seed, Grassy Seed, things like that. But there's not like an Unburden user that isn't Purloin, which I don't love. I feel like something like Driftblim instead of maybe Spectrier would have been really good here.
Mhm.
Or just something to abuse that terrain. Because right now it just feels like both terrains here are not being utilized super well. The TR mode is also only Reuniclus Purloin, which I do not love that at all. And there's no Tailwind, and some of these mons are pretty mid-speed. Like, sure, Spectrier is fast, and Zapdos G is fast, but Rillaboom is not super fast. Finny's not that fast. Crook is not as fast as you want it to be. And you don't have a way to set Tailwind. Your best option is to Airstream Boost with Rillaboom and Zapdos for like positive speed control into faster teams. And your TR mode is limited to that Reuniclus, Purloin, Registeel, and I just don't love that. And the type cores are incomplete. So you have your Fantasy core, which is Fairy, Steel, Dragon. We don't have a Dragon type, and we don't have a Fire type. So for our Grass, Water, Fire, Water, Grass core. And I don't know, it's a bit odd. There is to the credit, there is a Ground Electric Flying core. That's one that some people really pay a lot of mind to and care about a lot. I don't, but it's worth mentioning that core is present. I also think it has the Psychic Dark other core.
Psychic Dark fighting, yeah.
Yeah, it has that core. But I mean, it's got such good offensive pieces. I'm just worried they don't play well together, and I'm worried there's just not enough support. I'm worried that if someone sets Tailwind, you're in trouble. I'm worried if someone sets TR, you're in trouble. It feels like this team kind of just maxes and then it hopes the pieces are strong enough, which I think they will be sometimes, but not enough of the time with how quality a lot of the other teams were.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Yeah, a couple things. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things that you said. I believe that the double terrain can be cool, but the only issue I see with that is, like you kind of mentioned, the Firewater Grass core is kind of incomplete, and Tapu Fini covers for the Rillaboom's fire weakness, so it's kind of hard to kind of be consistent with your terrains. And on top of that, you don't have an Unburden user to use a seed. I actually think that Thievul over Purloin would have been insane on this team. I think it would have been great.
That would have been cool.
It would have been cool. But there's no TR mode on this team. Like, Reuniclus is cool under Trick Room. You don't have a consistent way to set it though. You do have Fake Out, but you don't have Redirection, and you only have one mon that can really abuse Trick Room.
The way that you set it is you copycat Purloin Max Guard Reuniclus. That's how you set it, which that wastes a turn of max. Otherwise, you're just hoping that your Reuniclus doesn't get taunted or die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I want to talk about, too, is budgeting. I don't love how this team is budgeted, personally speaking. I think there are some nice value picks. I think Purloin and Xurkitree are pretty low value for where they're at, same with Zapdos G. But, like, this isn't a lot of mons compared to most of the other teams that we're going to be looking at. And I don't like that as much. I feel like having less mons to prep for is, like, sometimes, yes, you can have too many mons and things are not synergistic or they're not working well together. That's foreshadowing for our next team. But there is one of the nice things with draft is having that really solid option through line where you have that full list of 10 or 11 Pokemon that are really, really good, that any of them can come. On this team, I feel like it's going to be Rillaboom, Spectrier, Tapu Fini, Zapdos, Crook, and then a Flex. 99% of the time. Like, that's going to be the team. And I just don't love that. I think that makes your team a little too linear. And if you notice there, none of those mons are really supportive that I listed. So
yeah,
they're just kind of hoping. Anything to add, Destiny?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Destiny, you get the next team.
All right,
Nexus Ironworks.
We got number 10. This is the Nexus Ironworks, coached by PKNexus. We're gonna go down the line here. We got Serena, Mudsdale, Torkoal, Cherim, Colossal, Venusaur G-Max, Heloisk, Talonflame, Drampa, Lilligant, and Reggie Rock. All right, so I'm just gonna go down the pros and cons. You guys know what it is. So for one, the sun mode here is pretty spicy. I personally really like this team. At first, I had you ranked pretty high, but we all kind of, came together and decided, 10 was a more appropriate ranking for you. And we're gonna get to that in a second when we get to the cons. But on to the next pro. Nice budget picks with Drampa, Lilligant, and a few others. Personally, Drampa, I feel, is a really hot pick, and Lilligant is not to be slept on at any moment. Like, I really think that was a really solid pick as well. And lastly, you have a strong Dynamax threats all around. Obviously, Venusaur G-Max is one of the best, but you also have the Cole, you can go ahead and D-Max, Mudsdale. You have a couple of options here that you can really get off with. As for the cons, you got proc for Colossal is, Surf Heloisk, and that's kind of sus. And your proc for Mudsdale's Triple Axle Serena, which, also pretty sus. But I mean, it could work out, but, you don't want those to be your procking options if you can choose to have other ones, In terms of this, you have a massive shared type weakness as well, being ground, ice, and rock, some of the more, frequently used types in the metagame. So that's something you might have to, patch up if you can. Your weather denial / support, options ruin almost all of your major strategies for the team. And also, where is the Trick Room setter when you have such great mons to abuse it? You have Drampa there to abuse it, Regirock, Colossal, and Mudsdale, all without a Trick Room setter to help abuse some of the faster teams when they can just decimate them and under the Trick Room. So I feel like if you take a second to really go look for some better options, maybe move some pieces here and there, you can have a really threatening team. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Ryan and Hunter, you guys can take it away if you have any other thoughts.
All right, yeah, sure. So like Destiny said, this team, there's an easy fix to this team that I think will bump this team up so high in the rankings. I just add a consistent Trick Room setter. I think this team is insane offensively. With the Sun mode, you got the Venusaur Torkoal, which is insane. It's easily one of the best weather combos you can have in the metagame, specifically Series 9. You also have mons like Lilligant that can support the Torkoal well with the After You and the Sun. With the Chlorophyll, it's really sick. You got the Tailwind support with the Talonflame. You got Heliolisk. You have the cores. You're lacking the water typing, which is, it's okay. You have a Sun team, I guess, but if you add Jellicent on this team, I think it would be a lot better.
They cannot, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately. But lots of great max options too, like the Venusaur, the Torkoal, or I'm sorry, not Torkoal, the Mudsdale. Who maxes Torkoal? I don't know. Colossal.
It's not bad. I've done it.
Serena's a pretty decent max option too, along with Regirock. Like I said, and Drampa too, actually, under Trick Room. I've actually used Dynamax Drampa before under Trick Room. It's actually really, really underrated.
Really powerful, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for 5 points, Drampa's a ridiculous steal. Same with Lilligant.
Yeah.
Chlorophyll Sleep Powder and After You is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a lot of mons that really like the Sun. He's got a couple different modes here. The only issue is he can't really capitalize on a lot of those great modes without a consistent Trick Room setter. There aren't many left, so I totally get not getting one, or the one that you'd want per se. But I think a Trick Room setter dropping, I don't know what you would drop. You can figure that out for yourself. I really can't tell you what to drop.
Have suggestions.
I think a lot of these. Okay, Ryan, go ahead then.
Okay. If I had this comp, I think Colossal is very pointless on this comp as it stands. You have no proc for it. Surf Heliolisk is not a proc. You take 35%, I'm sure. It's going to be a ridiculous mon to have as your proc option. You drop the Colossal, you get a Trick Room Setter. And part of the reason I also don't love Colossal is the niche it has is super similar to the Torkoal as an offensive fire type, the Talonflame as an offensive fire type, and you have the better of the two rock types is frankly Regirock. So, like, just, I would drop that in a heartbeat. Which I know dropping Colossal might seem weird to some folks. I'm personally, on some comps, I think Colossal is insane and really, really, really strong. And for 14 points, that's very budget for it. But as it stands, that's it. Yeah, Prankster is my biggest concern. Like, if someone has Prankster Weather, or they just redirect you for a turn and then click Max Geyser or Max Rockfall into a lot of your stuff, you're totally ruined. Because without that sun being up, all of a sudden your speed tiers are not as strong overall. Yes, you have Tailwind on the Talonflame, but that's not as consistent of Tailwind as you possibly could have. It just feels like this team has a really like solid sun mode that just needs a couple extra things. It needs another support piece or two, and it needs that Trick Room Setter. And there's some kind of what I like to call role redundancy, where there are a few mons on here that have similar enough roles that they can probably be dropped. Like, I love Serena. It's one of my favorite mons in draft. I'm not 100% sure it needs to be here over something that can complete a type core. I have similar thoughts on Cherim. I feel like Cherim and Lilligant have similar roles. And for Cherim being 4 points and Lilligant being 2, I think Lilligant's the better of those. I think the Colossal is ultimately unnecessary. I think that if some of those changes happen, this becomes the best, potentially, like, easy top 3, personally speaking.
Oh, yeah.
As it stands, though, I can't rate it much higher than this, because, like, a lot of the top teams have stuff that can stop your weather. And if this weather doesn't work, then you're in trouble. At least, and especially without a Trick Room Setter. So.
Right.
All right,
Yep.
next team. Okay.
Ryan, you should take this one, yeah.
I get this team. Okay, Bloomington Boom, coached by Coilbuilder. Now, Coilbuilder, I don't know you, but your first pro is you won me over immediately with your mon selection. I love every single goddamn mon on this team so much. These are all stuff I've used a lot. Rillaboom, Driftbloom is something that I've drafted before myself. I've used Sylveon with like Immense before. I have gotten insane usage out of Surfetched. I think Incineroar, Rotom Wash are great. Stack Attack is really good. So like, I just for the record, like, you personally have, like, yes, you're number 9 on the PRs, but you have my personal favorite team. This is the team I would run in this league. Moving on to actual things. So really good terrain synergy. Kind of in contrast to one of the earlier teams, this has the Driftbloom, which really benefits well with that Unburden boost. The Incineroar actually benefits from this terrain quite a bit because he can Bulldoze and Earthquake are nerfed into it. It also legitimizes maybe doing like a Bulldoze Rillaboom into a Weakness Policy Incineroar option. It helps the Stack Attack in a similar way. It's really good for Surfetched. Grassy terrain is great for Surfetched, both for recovery purposes, because its base HP is garbage, and because it gets Grassy Glide. So there's like a lot of things on this team that benefit from that really high value 18-point Rillaboom, which I love. This is easily the best Fire Water Grass core in the entire league. Rillaboom, Incineroar, Rotom Wash is, that's gonna be really tough to break.
That's ridiculous.
And the Fantasy core is good too. I like the Stack Attack of Sound and Sylveon, and the synergies are just all around. So there are a couple problems that kind of kept this team where it's at. First off, 4x weaknesses. This team has the Stack Attack and Salamence without any form of way to redirect super effective damage off them, and that really scares me, because a lot of the top teams that we're going to be talking about later will be able to just one-hit KO those mons. The speed tiers are also pretty underwhelming overall. If you kind of look, Rillaboom's got an okay speed tier, Incense slow, Rotom's kind of got that mid-speed, Sylveon's got that mid-speed, Surfetched got that mid-speed, and because of that, now you're sitting here going, well, wait, I have Tailwind Driftbloom, and it's like, yes, you do, that's a really good option. Problem is, is that means that you are committing yourself to leading Rillaboom Drifblim every game if you want Tailwind, which is a huge issue. Like, can Drifblim survive and set Tailwind with like a Sash or something? Yeah, absolutely. But you don't really want to... I've used this before. I've tried to do that kind of a Tailwind setting with Drifblim. It's not as good as just leading it with Rillaboom, and while that's an extremely potent lead, it should not be the only lead for that kind of speed control. The other issue is that this TR mode is super underdeveloped, and Stack has way too many points for how not hard a TR team this is. 17 points for Stack Attacka really bites into what this team could have had. For a Mon that has a lot of 4x weaknesses, and frankly there's no other real TR abusers. I mean, this team's overall pretty min speed, so you can slap an Iron Ball and a Room Service on some stuff and kind of get stuff slow enough. But nothing super loves TR on this team, except for that Stack Attacka, which is just way too many points for what you're getting out of it, because that should be 17 points on like a harder TR team. Like, the reason I like your team so much is because it has those really nice grassy terrain Rillaboom synergies, and you didn't build anything that helps that Stack Attacka synergy. That other Trick Room setter, that harder Trick Room mode isn't present. So you're not getting much out of those 17 points. You're better off getting a more middling Trick Room setter and maybe something else that can operate in Trick Room, maybe a redirector that's like a grass type redirector like Tangela or Tangrowth or something, just so that you have something to help the team kind of flow together better. Just because the speed tiers on this team are a little wonky, and I don't really see you clicking TR very often, and I see you clicking Tailwind all the time, but I'm worried that like that makes your team a little too linear and too predictable. Really good overall. I mean, I like it a lot. This team will take some souls. This team will 100% take some souls. But I've personally used teams very similar to this, and there are some misplacements here and there that kind of hold it back.
Yep. So I'm assuming I can go now.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed about this team was, like Ryan said, there's a lot of 4x weaknesses, but for a lot of them, he actually has decent options. Like, for example, Rotom Wash and Incineroar both resist Ice, which is one big one for Elements, which I think is really cool.
Those cores are great for those switch-ins.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one, too, the Stack Attack ground weakness, like he's got Rotom, Drifblim, Salamence, and if they want to use like Earthquake or something, the Grassy Turn helps with that, too. So overall, the 4x weaknesses suck, but if you do a good enough job of prepping, I think you can have success with this team a lot of the time. This is one of those teams that I think Ryan can agree with me. There are a lot of holes in this team, but if you can prep good enough to try and avoid those holes and pilot this team very well, you can actually have a lot of success with this team. I think this team has so much versatility and so much synergy around the board. Other than the Tailwind thing that Ryan mentioned, I think this team is incredible. It's just that like, as a team, like, you need to pilot it so well. And if you don't pilot it well, I can see this team flopping a lot of the time. Going back to what Ryan said about the Tailwind thing, like, the Tricker mode is kind of non-existent. It's basically only Stack Attacka. And your only forms of positive speed control outside of Trick Room are Max Airstream on the Salamence and Tailwind with the Unburned Drifblim, which means you have to lead Rillaboom Drifblim, which is exactly what Ryan said. So that's pretty much it. What about you, Destiny?
Get their stream as well, but yeah.
Right, yeah. Destiny, what do you think about this team?
I think, I think it's good. All right, let's move on to number 8 now.
All right. We got the Long Island Landos.
Rillaboom and Incineroar are just really good together. I really like that a lot. And Rotom Wash, like Hunter and Ryan both said, it really covers that 4x weakness for Mints, so allows it to really go crazy in certain matchups. Overall, personally, I don't think the several 4x weaknesses are really that big. It's just like without the redirection, it kind of, it brings it out more. But overall, I think the team is really good, and don't be, put down by the 9th place spot. Like we said in the beginning, a lot of teams are going to have to be ranked lower or higher than others. Doesn't mean your team is bad, and doesn't mean you're not going to do good in the season.
I like this team a lot, like, if it's not clear. Moving on. Long Island Landos, coached by Blitz. I believe Blitz actually won the last season.
Yes, he did. He actually beat me and Destiny consecutively.
that's nice. And
Yeah.
you know, like we've said before, though, it might seem weird that hey, we have the former champ at 8th, but remember, we're only looking at the teams, not the coach. I'm sure Blitz can pilot this team to much higher than 8th place. PRs are not predictive; they are just here's what we saw. So Hunter, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, sure. I actually really like this team. Shout out Blitz, by the way. So let's just go on the list. Landers, Therian, Pelipper, Grimmsnarl, Gmax, Zapdos, Ludicolo, Naganadel. I guess that's the correct way you say it.
I don't know. Naganadel. Moving on.
It's Naganadel. I know. That's how I'm sorry. Anyways, Bisharp, Cofagrigus, and Caparaja. So one of the big things that sticks out to me, Blitz, is something that I think so one thing that I did last season that actually worked really, really well against you in the regular season was bringing Landorus plus Tailwind and just earthquaking everything. And this screams that to me. Like, you have two incredible options to put next to Landorus, Pelipper and Zapdos. I just think this team is incredible synergy-wise. The rain mode is great. Pelipper, Ludicolo, that's 21 points for an amazing rain mode. That's really budget. That's a really awesome find for you. Great complementary pieces for Landers for sure, especially with the screens on Grimmsnarl. That does not have to max, but the G Max actually allows you to have a little bit more. How do I want to say it? Just versatility with what you can do. The Grimmsnarl, like I said, is just a fantastic support Pokemon. It gets fake tier screens, Thunder Wave, you name it. Naganadel is very budget. That was a very great find for 13 points in what is that? The 6th round. I think that's very, very good. Kind of helps you out with that core there for a second. The Dragon Steel Fairy core. And speaking of steel types, let's move on to the cons a little bit. The double steel type with Bisharp and Caparaja is kind of odd. I mean, both mons are fine, but Bisharp is kind of extremely predictable, and you're duplicating two types that you'd already have with the Caparaja and the Grimmsnarl with the dark and steel typing. So I think what you could have done is maybe got a fire type. I know it seems weird on a rain team, but it still helps you cover that fire, water, grass core. You could have looked for something like that, or who knows? I mean, maybe Bisharp pops out for you. This is just my opinion. Max Hailstorm and Max Quake. Yeah. Anyways, Trick Room mode seems like an afterthought. That's very true. Caparaja plus Cofagrigus is fine, but when those are your only options under Trick Room, I mean, I guess Sucker Punch on Bisharp is fine, but all of your other Pokemon are just way too fast for Trick Room. I think anything, like Caparaja is your slowest Pokemon. I think it's slower than Cofagrigus. Either way, it's your slowest Pokemon, and it's your only slow Pokemon other than your Trick Room setter that's not going to be doing much damage in the first place. So the Trick Room mode's kind of sus, but other than that, man, I really love what you did here. I love the rain mode, and Zapdos synergizes so well with the rain mode. It's incredible. Landorus is a great max option. You have great speed control options. I just think that the Max Quake and the Max Hailstorms are going to kind of be a little bit of an issue for you on paper, bro. So, Ryan, what do you think about this team?
Yeah, I really like this team. I've liked this team a lot from the first time I looked at it, and I like it more and more the more and more I look at it. I think I rated it pretty high compared to you two, and I still might rate it higher. Mm-hmm. I just really like what they got going for him. Yeah, Bisharp's a mon that I've seen do really well and really badly in draft. Like, it just really depends on the coach and how well they can pilot it. It favors a little bit more of an aggressive play style, but I don't like the doubling down on the double dark type, double steel type. It doesn't feel great there. But yeah, I mean, the Naganadel is super strong there, really helps with the speed tiers, same with the Zapdos, Landorus. Pelipper gets Tailwind for folks who didn't know that. So, Grimmsnarl's such a good support for rain as well. Setting screens and thunder waving stuff, and having that Prankster, I think it gets Prankster and Dance, but having the ability to control the weather, keep things under control, and also G-Max Grimmsnarl is a beast of a G-Max. Fun fact, lost to it in finals my own season recently.
Yep.
So, I really like this team. I think it's in very, very good shape to do well. If you have a coach like Blitz piloting something like this, I think it'll do a lot better than I think what the average coach would do. That said, I'm really worried about that Hailstorm Quake. Like, the Quake Hailstorm combo looks so strong into this team. And in general, one of my issues with really heavy weather teams is that sometimes that weather is not super reliable, and my issue is that because there are max moves that can reset weather, part of my problem I'm running into with this team is I'm looking at the max moves that can reset this weather, and one of them's Hailstorm. And guess what? Landos is one of the key pieces on this team. Like, if that 18 points was a Celesteela or something like that, where it's a steel type, and then you have like a lower tier ground type, maybe covering that TR mode, like a Hippowdon or a Sandaconda or something. I don't know, I'm just throwing mons out. But you kind of get my idea here. Like, I feel like something like that would be a little bit more synergistic, because right now I'm worried that some of the ways that people will handle your weather are really strong into you. Not that you can't prep or build around it, but that's just kind of my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts, Destiny?
Oh yeah, so just to piggyback off of what Ryan said earlier, I'm in love with this rain mode. I think this team honestly is like, the more I'm looking at it, it's just such a good team, honestly. Besides the max hailstorm and max quake, I agree with that 100%. I feel like that's gonna be a big problem. If there's a team out there that has a really solid combo for that, you're gonna have to watch out for that. But other than that, like, just great support around Lando. G-Max Grimmsnarl is a beast, and Zapdos in any format, doubles, singles, whatever, is just a fantastic Pokemon. So
that's fact.
you just got all those options there. So
I don't think you've played any draft until you've been swept by a Zapdos, just a Cantonian Zapdos.
True.
I just think that's a mark of something everyone needs to experience at some point. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 6 through 7, I'm gonna let Destiny take this one. 6 and 7 were a tie. Our total average score was 6.67 for both these coaches, so their slot is interchangeable.
Yep. So, but first we're gonna go ahead and go with OCFrey, coach of the Pogging Porygons. Love that name, by the way. That's like one of my top 3 names in the whole league, honestly. But you got Metagross, Togekiss, Cinderace, Raikou, Torracat, Noivern, Urshifu, Rapid, G-Max, Regigigas, Coughing, and Grookey. All right. So just real quick note, Metagross and Togekiss. Oh my gosh, that is such a good core right there. Like, just a duo of 2 just going crazy, honestly. Great support for Metagross with Tailwind as well. But anyways, I'm gonna get to that in a second, because you got our pros and cons on the side here. But first pro, just a powerful offensive pieces all around. You see Cinderace there, you see Raikou, you see Noivern, you see all these different offensive threats. They can hit you from all kinds of angles. You got to worry about that in prep, no matter who you are. I feel like this is just well-rounded offense all around. Just great redirection as well. I already kind of pointed at it. Togekiss, not only with just Tailwind, but also Follow Me support is going to be really good.
It doesn't get Tailwind and this gen.
Oh,
it doesn't?
No, Noivern is the Tailwind setter this go around.
Yeah.
I see, yes.
If you're in like a Natdex format, Togekiss gets Tailwind and doubles, but in this format it won't.
I got you. Okay. But even then, Togekiss with the Follow Me support is also still really good. Torracat actually is really solid with Parting Shot support as well, to get those special attack and regular physical attack lowering situations when it's needed. It can be very clutch, as well as fake out support as well. And like Ryan just confirmed with me, he just went ahead and corrected me real quick. But Noivern actually gets Tailwind, so that's great support for Metagross as well. You just have a great support system with all your offensive pieces. Raikou and Metagross proc, just really, really solid. You got multiple options that come from Pokemon that are having a bit of a lower attack spectrum, so they're not going to be hitting them as hard, so they're able to easily proc those without suffering too much of a consequence for it. Noivern and Torracat support kind of already covered that, and you just have great max options from Max Metagross. Togekiss even can max, and it could be a menace. Cinderace is just a beast. I used Cinderace last season, and it was just a nightmare for a lot of teams. Yeah, Raikou, Noivern, you just have a bunch of different max options. Regigigas as well. after it gets that slow start off. I mean, and pairing with coughing as well is really good too. But on to the cons. There's no trick room mode at all. So if there is a team you go against with a trick room mode, they can kind of stomp this because you have a lot of really fast mons. And no way to really counteract it besides maybe like I don't know, Metagross. But even then, it's really shaky. Just a way to counter the trick room. Regigigas and coughing is pretty inconsistent and sometimes can seem pretty unnecessary. Your points could have been used to go for something else, basically, rather than trying to make that combo work on this team. But it's not a bad combo. It's just going to be very inconsistent to pull off, and most coaches will know how to prepare against that and be able to work around that. And lastly, your Quake slide, defense, it's very solid overall for the comp. So. Just overall, the 6 and 7 spot interchangeable with Young Daniel team over here at 6. But again, it can be interchangeable. So I feel like this is a really good team. And that's it for me. Ryan or Hunter, you guys can take it away.
Yeah, I want to talk about this one a bit. So the Raikou Metagross Bulldoze proc is really good on this team. I like all the max options. The Super Lactogicus is really good. I like the Noivern a lot here. The type cores are overall really solid. And their Shifu is really good. I actually want to talk more about the cons with this team, because I want to be clear on why some of these are bad. No TR mode at all is particularly poor because a lot of the top teams have really good TR modes. And not having any way to stop it, like none at all, is, I think, an oversight in any kind of doubles draft. I think even if your TR setter is 1 Mon, you need 1 Mon with Trick Room. Period. Like, you need something that can stop Trick Room or at least reverse Trick Room. Because the fact of the matter is that when you're talking about a comp where the speed tiers are Cinderace, Raikou, and Noivern, my first thought playing a team like this is, well, I'll set Trick Room against it. And that's an issue, if you don't have any way to stop that. Gigas Coughing, I've actually played against that combination twice now in draft, and I have seen it flop on its face unbelievably hard. Wheezing Gigas is pretty inconsistent in draft in my experience, and Coughing Gigas is even worse, because Coughing with Eviolite and Focus Sash still doesn't live anything. And it's not that Regigigas isn't like a good max option, because it's a great max option, but it's 16 points, and if you already have max options like Metagross and Cinderace, why are you bothering with a Regigigas? Like, just max those. Like, one of the reasons this team I think rates a little higher is the support feels overall a lot more cohesive to me than some of the earlier teams. You got the redirection. Raikou is actually an amazing support piece. It has inner focus dual screens with the Bulldoze proc and Eerie Impulse and T-Wave and all that stuff. Torcat is pure support. Noivern, other than Tailwind, doesn't use Tailwind and Fast Taunt doesn't do a whole lot, but that's still good. So like, a lot of things work super well on this team. It's just that, like, both the Quake Slide weakness, where that's the combination of Rock Slide and Earthquake, kind of more of a classic doubles term there. You can also just consider it Ground Rock weakness. Ground Rock coverage completely annihilates this team if you just go from top to bottom. Metagross weak to ground, Togekiss weak to rock. Cinderace can be any type, but it's usually a fire or a steel type, or maybe a flying type, so it's weak to one of the two at any time. Raikou is weak to ground, Torcat's weak to ground, Noivern's weak to rock. Shifu resists one of the two. Gigas is neutral to all of them, but then you have to bring Coughing out, and guess what Coughing is weak to? Ground. So that's a huge issue. In fact, that is such a huge issue that I'm pretty sure I rank this team slightly lower than the other two. Just because I'm sitting here looking at that coverage, the no TR mode, and personally speaking, I would exchange that Gigas Coughing for something for TR. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, just like 2 9-point mons that just give you something to handle that, and ideally some kind of just rock and ground resist that seems a little more consistent. And then this team bumps to, like, literally with those two changes, this team would bump to like number 2 or 1, like straight up. Yeah. In my book.
Yeah, like Ryan said, the offensive presence on this team is almost unmatched. Like, the hyper offense, the team is insane. like even if you can get Regigigas to work, that mon is like menace. Like that mon is demon time. Like if you get it to work,
it can be.
Problem is against good players, and there's a lot of them. It's just I think you're gonna have a little bit of trouble with that. I think it's very, very easy to predict what Gigas is gonna do, especially since you have to bring the coughing, and even though coughing at budget is it's really budget, right? Like it's
for 1 point, I would take coughing. Like I'm not mad at
absolutely.
that. But that also means that 2 of
no.
your slots are Gigas coughing when they could be
Right.
Metagross Togekiss. Like if you're not bringing Metagross Togekiss because you want to bring Gigas coughing, that seems like a really bad thing to me on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, give me a team that's going to be able to cover everything that Metagross, Togekiss, and Cinderace wants to do, along with Torracat, Tailwind, and Raikou support. Are you serious? Oh, and let's just not even talk about Urshifu, by the way. That one's crazy. Problem is, with this team, the Firewater Grass core is lacking because you have Grookey as your grass type. Now, Grookey can be cool. It gets fake out. You can, it gets the, okay, look. Grookey's not the best mon, but instead of having the Regigigas there, you could have had a grass type, or I believe you have the Dragon Fairy, Steel Fairy type. You're fine there. But I think last season, like I don't mean to pick on you, Frey, but last season, I believe me and Ryan said the same thing about your team last season, that you had that Dragapult Colossal team with Rillaboom, and we said that you hard lose to Trick Room because you don't have anything to stop it, or kind of deny it in any way. Like you had fake out, you had a couple things to do with it, but deal with it. I mean, but overall, you have no Trick Room mode, so the teams above you all have solid Trick Room modes for the most part, or at least sufficient enough ones to be decent enough to be hyper offensive teams. And that's another thing I want to say is you have a couple mons with decent bulk, which include Metagross, Togekiss, Urshifu. Well, I mean, kind of Urshifu, Regigigas, but other than that, your team is relatively frail. You can put an Eviolite on Torracat, and like with the Eerie Impulse support with Raikou and Intimidate, like that's cool. But that's what a typical hyper offense team looks like, right? But you lose to bulky TR modes on paper. Not saying that you will lose to bulky TR modes, because I think you're a good player and I think you can pilot the team to win games. But like the Regigigas coughing definitely could have been something else, because I think it's way too inconsistent in draft, especially against good players. And the TR mode's just, oh man, like it's not even there, man. Like I think that if you pick the TR modes instead of those, I think this team would have been rated a little bit higher. I think we keep saying that about teams, like, oh, if you just tweak this just a little bit, like it would be ranked so much higher. And it's true. I think a lot of these teams are great. They're just missing, one thing.
It also tells you how strong that things are. If these teams were poor, then we wouldn't say, oh, with two different picks, 2-3 different picks, your team would have been 5th or 6th. Like that is actually a compliment to how good most of the teams in this division drafted. I actually think this was a super solid draft overall.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't personally want to play against any of those teams. And honestly, if I was the one who had a team rated by these PRs, I could see it being mid or low on the draft. So, I'm just saying, because it's just a couple little pieces were really the deciding factors here a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to Team Daniel. I'll go ahead and take this one, because I actually love this team. This has the best speed tiers in the division. You got Cinderace, Clefairy, Milotic, Persian, Alola, Virizion, Escav, Dusknoir, Torn, Cottonee, Regieleki, Regice. Okay. So your mons that go fast go very fast. I mean, Cinderace, Persian, Torn, Aleki, that is ridiculously fast. And then your slow mons are Escavalier, Dusknoir, excuse me? That's
right.
That's so nice. The synergy is great across the board on this team. You've got just really nice offensive threats placed with really good supportive pieces all around. This is a very nicely balanced team in a lot of ways that can handle a lot of threats. It's got TR, Tailwind, and Redirection. Clefairy Redirection is great here, especially with a threat like Cinderace. You can just lead Cinderace, Clefairy, and win games with that. The Tailwind is being covered by the Torn, and I think Torn is a super underrated mon. Torn Tyrion, anyway. Super underrated Tailwind setter, super underrated mon in general, really powerful. And that TR mode, Dusknoir is an insanely good TR setter for 4 points. I mean, talk about finding something insanely budget. It is,
Yeah.
I think, arguably more consistent than Dustclops because Dustclops is taunt bait. Like, a lot of people will just run Dust Noir with Mental Herb, and then that's basically free Trick Room. Super good. And the Firewater Grass Core is great here. I love the Cinderace Virizion, Milotic. So there's only a couple cons. The Fantasy Core is missing a Dragon type, which isn't a huge deal, but it's something to mention. The offense in general has a decent amount of counterplay. And what I mean by that is that a lot of it, like a lot of the pieces on here that are offensive have specific things that work against them. So Cinderace is weak to getting its attack stat lowered. -1 in Cinderace. Cinderace does not hit calcs almost ever. You have Milotic to help you with that, which is another part of your great synergy, but things like that, like Intimidate, Max Wormwind drops, are typically going to be a problem for something like Cinderace in draft, in my experience. Virizion has a 4x flying weakness. Regieleki has basically one type of move it can hit, and it's electric, and you better believe it'll hurt like a lot, but Max Quake is a problem. Boosting the Spit F and handling it, because Arlecki can be a good max threat. It's also just a good support piece with like Electro Web screens, yada yada. However, like in an offensive context, it is beat by very specific things. Escavalier has a 4x fire weakness, so you kind of see what I'm getting at here. It's that like the offensive pieces are good. The problem is Cinderace is bad when it's at -1. Virizion has a 4x flying weakness that just gets it nuked, and also can't set up if the opponent has redirection, which a lot of the good teams do. Escavalier has a 4x fire weakness, and like literally I've calced against Escav before, like even Akaberry Heat Waves will still usually KO from most halfway decent fire types. So Torn can be offensive, but it's a monotype, so it's not as consistent. But yeah, I mean, it's just that I'm looking at it and I think that there are so many ways that you can beat the Mons individually. I think as a whole, this team is insanely hard to deal with. But I am noting that each individual piece has something that you can kind of abuse as the opponent to get an upper hand. It's not as bulletproof as a few of the other teams that are ranked a little higher. I actually think some mid-tier picks in exchange for some more consistent pieces would have been good. What I mean by that is that like stuff like Cinderace and Regieleki are both pretty high. Like obviously Regieleki and Cinderace are super good, and it's overall like a pretty mid power draft. But I still feel like there's some pieces that could have been exchanged for something a little more consistent to help with some of those problems. Overall, I do love this team a lot. I don't think I rated this team top 5, but I was pretty close to doing so, personally speaking. I also think things like Cottony, Regice, really good budget picks for where they're at. And Dust Noir's insane for 4 points. I don't even know how you got that. So, no, great team overall. Super impressed. It's got all the modes covered. It's got that TR Tailwind redirection that I love to see. Firewater Grass is good. Offense is good. Excited to see your season. It's only in the 6th place slot because I think there are ways to handle some of these threats. I think a Dragon type would have been really good. And there's just something missing. Like, it's really hard. I wish I could explain it better, but there's something missing from this draft that's just kind of making me worry about it.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I noticed was, and this is a con, not to knock on the team per se, but it's like all the great support options on this team are super fake out weak. I mean, Regieleki, that's like the most famous fake out bait Pokemon in the game, right? Regieleki. It's like Regieleki, Torn, Persian if you can outspeed it, and Clefairy. Like those ones are all fake out bait. And without that support there, I think a lot of the team lacks, unless you have a good matchup with Cinderace or something like that. You know what I mean? But I mean, if you have Virizion, Persian out, and they somehow fake out your Persian, your Virizion's just sitting there with max, like, oh, okay, I'm just here without any boost, and I'm not going to be able to do any damage. It's very fake out bait. Like, a lot of the support options are fake out bait for sure. Other than that, though, like Ryan said, the speed tiers are great, like insane, in both aspects, fast and slow. I think this is a great team, but you're going to see here soon the top 5 teams. It's very hard to not put any of these teams in the top 5. I think we can all agree with this.
Yeah.
Very big.
The top 5 was
Yeah.
so hard to rate. I think we all had a completely different top 5. Like, straight up, just different. None of us had the same top 5.
It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to rate these next teams in the top 5. So a lot of these teams, I would say 6 to 10, maybe 6 to 9 are just all solid teams, but I just think they're so okay. I'm stuttering because I just can't fathom how well these players drafted this season. Like, you very rarely see a consistently amazing draft throughout. Like, we were looking through these teams like, oh, that team's good. Oh, wait a minute, this team's good. Oh, this team's good. Oh, this team's good. Like, it was very, very hard to rank these, which is, I think, why Ryan wanted to do the average, because that was basically the only way where we could come to a consensus on things, especially in the top 5.
Yeah.
So, anyways, back to the team. Destiny, what do you think about Daniel's team, dude? All right, he's dead. Anyways,
right, Destiny died. Moving on. Okay.
You take that last team. I'll take this team.
Okay.
So this is the Detroit Dhelmise, coached by our guy Razz. Shout out to Razz. He's got Tornadus, Primarina, Regidrago, Riolu, Rhyperior, Slowking, Galarian Form, Unova, Darmanitan, Lipard, Durant, Fungus, Shedinja. Okay, so I actually had this team pretty highly ranked to start, and then the other teams came in, and we discussed it, and I think there are a lot of big cons with this team, even though it looks amazing offensively on paper, like amazingly, especially with all the offense that's supported by Torn. I mean, Tornadus Primarina is insane, along with Regidrago. Oh my god, like that's the core I used last season. It's absolutely insane. Like, those mons benefit from Tailwind like so much, and they're so powerful. Solid value picks across the board. I think the Lipard in 11 was really good, along with the Riolu in 4. I think those are the ones that stick out to me the most. Fungus in 5 is decent. Good redirection. Finishes your Fire, Water, Grass core. Even though Fungus isn't the most bulky Pokemon in the world, you can still run Sash and get away with Rage Powder sometimes.
Yeah, Rage Powder.
Very, very
you can just spore something. I mean,
yeah, spore something. If it lives, yeah, you can just spore it. So the TR mode plus Lipard as backup support modes, I think those are, like, the TR mode's really sick. You got the Slowking, Galar, and Rhyperior. I think those mons synergize very well together. The fast mode, oh my gosh, like, the Prankster support on this team is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You have so many Pokemon that just benefit from the support moves that Lipard and Riolu want to do. Specifically, the coaching boosts and the fake tears. Oh my lord! And all the other things that Lipard gets, like Thunder Wave and Taunt, just so many cool options with this team. Great versatility. So now to the cons. This is why this team is 5 and not like 3 or 2. The speed tiers are lacking out of Tailwind. I totally agree with this statement. A lot of these Pokemon, aside from Durant and Torn, you kind of want to run Scarf on it if you're Tailwind, like Darmanitan. That's the main one that I'm talking about. The speed tiers aren't the greatest. Outside of Tailwind, like Regidrago, Primarina, they're all sub 100. I mean, the Lipard's great, but all the mons that you really, really, really want to use are also going to be the ones that you want to max. For example, you want to max Primarina, although it can operate outside of max and be great. It definitely thrives in the Dynamax format with the Tornadus, which is one of the main things I think Razz was looking for. Rhyperior wants a Dynamax. Darmanitan might, and Durant might. Those are a lot of your offensive
Durant
options.
has to max, otherwise you're dealing with Hustle.
Right, yeah. Absolutely.
And if you're Razz and get that tilted, I wouldn't mess with Durant Hustle. So.
Anyways. Ryan, why'd you have to call him out like that? Come on.
I have to call somebody out a little bit. It's been a while. I know Razz personally. He'll take it.
Yeah, we know Razz. That's our guy. But yeah, other than those, the speed tier is lacking, and a lot of the mons want to max. Oh, another thing too. This is something that I think Ryan really wants to talk about. Too many things have below average coverage moves, and I'll just say below average because the move pools on some of these mons aren't the best. Specifically, I think you were talking about Darmanitan and Regidrago.
Darm and Drago. Prims isn't amazing. It gets Energy Ball, which is nice, but that's like it. Torn offensively speaking. doesn't get everything you want it to get typically. Durant's isn't perfect. The Mons with the best coverage on this team are the Rhyperior and the Slowking.
You can go ahead. You can go, Aston.
Yeah. The big thing here is that Torn is ridiculous. Torn should have been 18 points. I don't know why it's not. Priority Tailwind in this metagame is really good, and when you combine that with how good of a Dynamax option Torn is, this team is insane. Like, Riolu can just prankster coaching boost Torn, it can click Airstream, and then Razz can auto-win. Like, that is a legitimate strategy he can use, which is super scary. I mean, if he's facing someone he thinks they're going to TR, okay, well, Riolu Rhyperior. Alright, have fun. Like, oh my god.
Right.
Stuff like Regidrago is ridiculous. I mean, it's the thing that everyone forgets is that it's got Dragon-type Eruption with a... with the specs. I think it's a specs boost.
It is a specs boost for dragon moves, yeah.
Off the ability, and it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, a Mon with base 100 special attack just hitting you that hard, and then it can max too. Like, its max Wormwinds get ridiculous Okos, and it has base 200 HP, so it's plenty bulky. Primarina is just an unbelievable threat in any format, and if you have consistent Tailwind like Torn, Primarina really, really skyrockets in its viability. It goes from being a Mon that is worth 15 points to a Mon that's worth almost 18.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really good overall. I think my issues are... a lot of my issues are just that there's a couple things, like the Darm and the Durant I'm not 100% on this team. Neither of those two I'm super 100% feeling. I feel like the TR mode in general is kind of weak to ground moves. Slowking, Rhyperior, Fungus. I don't love ground types into that mode. I don't love Fake Out into this team. There's nothing that's like a Fake Out immunity that isn't Shedinja. Or Inner Focus Riolu, which Inner Focus Riolu is cool, but no one does that, so unless they have a cool player. Well, I've done it before. I did an Inner Focus. I suggested, I wasn't the one who played it, but I was front officing, and I suggested a Inner Focus Riolu into a Slurpuff Max, and it won. It was so funny. But yeah, I mean, this is such a good team. Like, it's gonna be brutal. Like, if he gets Tailwind up and starts clicking buttons on you, you just kind of lose. And on the rare game where Torn looks really good as a max option, like, that fast mode will just nuke you. I'm just mostly worried that lack of coverage is kind of a problem. If Tailwind's denied or it's matched, so if someone matches his Tailwind, he's also screwed in a lot of matchups, and I just think there's too many things that want to Dynamax on this team. Like, it's usually a good thing if you have a lot of max options, but it's kind of a problem if your Mon doesn't operate well if it's not maxed, which a lot of these Mons do not operate well if they're not maxed. So I think that kind of holds it back. I don't know if Destiny's still dead. Destiny, you alive?
Sorry, I'm back. I was just eating my own ass for a second. Where we at?
We're at Razz.
We're at Razz.
Oh, wow.
We've already talked about a lot of stuff. If you don't have a lot to say, that's okay. But if you got something you want to let everyone know about, go for it.
Basically, I'm just going to say Darmanitan goes Burr. And I love it.
Okay.
Favorite fire type.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, Destiny, since you're done eating ass, are you ready for to do our number 4 team?
I mean, I was enjoying that ass I was eating, but
okay, man. Okay.
But, all right, so next up we got Alice Sabrina, one of the dominant coaches from last season, back to running again. Coach of the I don't know this name of this team, but Charmanders, and we got Celesteela, Meowstic, Garchomp, Lapras, G-Max, Manectric, Crobat, Dhelmise, Mienshao, Silvally, and Quillfish. You know, I'm actually really, really tired, so I'm gonna let Hunter go ahead and read down these pros and cons.
All right, I got you.
Take it away, my brother.
I got you, bro. Okay, so as Destiny wanted to say was, this is a powerful Seal-oriented team. Absolutely. I think Celesteela plus Manectric for 22 points. I think that's incredible value, the Manectric pick. I think that's great. A lot of the time you see Celesteela plus Raichu, and I think that like Raichu has great utility, but I think Manectric with the Lightning Rod, and while it's decently strong, I think that's a great value pick. You can also put that next to Lapras too, which is another thing. The Crobat Tailwind unlocks a great deal of this team, absolutely. I think that the Silvally really, man, I just love how this team just meshes together. I think there's a lot of great synergistic options on this team. The Meowstic for screens is pretty cool. It's kind of like a budget Grimmsnarl for the Celesteela, which is what you normally see with Celesteela. You see Lightning Rod with Celesteela with a support Pokemon like Grimmsnarl specifically. I think Meowstic and Manectric are very, very budget options to replace those, but I think they're very solid on this team. The Garchomp's also nice here too. Benefits from Tailwind also with screens. The Silvally and Quillfish round up the team nicely. The Quillfish gives you Intimidate, and the Silvally is just, oh my god, I used it in the MDL season a couple seasons ago, and man, that mon was just amazing support-wise. The versatility you have with it when you can change it to any type is just insane. It's so hard to prep for, especially when you use it as a max option, which I did. Anyways, the cons. Now, we're getting to the point where these cons aren't necessarily that huge. A lot of these teams are so good that a lot of the cons aren't necessarily big things, but there are little things that could turn into big things. Unfortunately, this one does have a big one. The TR mode outside of Dhelmise is lacking big time. You don't really have a lot of slow Pokemon that can compete with the base 30 or base 35 Trick Room Sweepers. You also are a lack of a Fairy type, which is exactly why I think the Grimmsnarl is normally good with the Celesteela, because you can just draft a Dragon type after it and your Fantasy Core is done. Like, that is innate. Like, yeah. Celesteela plus Grimmsnarl is absolutely nuts. And with the Meowstic, you're getting the same utility almost out of the Grimmsnarl, but you're missing the Fairy typing, which is kind of big here.
Unless Silvally decides to be a Fairy type this week, which we should add as an addendum. Part of the reason this team works actually quite well is that the Silvally can cover some of these cons pretty nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the parting shot and everything, it's very, very good support-wise. So this one I actually really, really hard agree with. The Lapras has to max for maximum effectiveness. Say that 5 times fast. I don't think you can. I actually agree. I think it's limiting the team in scenarios. I think you're losing a lot of offensive pressure if you're maxing the Lapras, unless you're using some sort of weakness policy set, which has been a pretty big downside to a lot of players that have used Lapras. One of the biggest things I hear personally I used to use Lapras too, the power is actually lacking unless you run it with Life Orb or unless you run it with a weakness policy. And if you're running Lapras, most of the time you're going to have to max it. Otherwise, it's just there, and it's like I think it's like a 4-point Pokemon if it's not G-Max. It's not very good at all. Power, I mean, its bulk is fine. Has a lot of weaknesses, though. You pretty much have to max it for it to be good. And overall, this team doesn't really lack Max Flare, which, I mean, a lot of the time when people run Celesteela, they try and have a rain mode with it, which is exactly why we thought Blitz, if possible. I don't know if Celesteela was there, but Celesteela with that rain mode and that Grimmsnarl is just incredible, especially with the Manectric. That's exactly why people draft rain mode with Celesteela, because if you take away some of its primary weaknesses, good luck stopping that thing once it starts boosting. Trust me, it's absolutely absurd. So the problem is you don't really have that rain mode, so your team doesn't really like Max Flare that much. You have some options for it. The Quillfish and Garchomp specifically, but I mean, they can only do so much because, powerful Max Flare from some team isn't really going to end well.
There's also both Cinderaces are drafted.
Right, absolutely.
And, that's kind of an issue. Like, top tier fire types are kind of a problem. And Lapras is just, man, I've seen Lapras do so well and just absolutely fall flat in draft. The biggest problem is just that if you don't max it, then it's a 4-point Pokemon. And this team, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm gonna max Steela and Garchomp almost every game. Like, for 16 points, I don't know if I ever max Lapras. Just personally speaking, obviously the screen support with a Garchomp Steela, like, if you want to do a bulky Steela set behind Aurora Veil and Click Meteor Beam or Iron Defense or Leech Seed or whatever. I mean, obviously that'll win you games. This team's super strong though. I mean, the Meowstic Manectric is what really sold me on the team, and then when you toss in a Crobat Garchomp mode with Gmax Lapras also not being bad with a lot of the other stuff in the back, it's really good. And even though this team doesn't have a great TR mode overall, Meowstic helps with that. And also, not only does Meowstic help with that, but Steela doesn't do bad in TR. Like, yeah, it's not as slow as everything else in TR, but also it's a Celesteela. It'll sit, like, it'll just sit on it. Like, Razz's team has a Scavalier, which just eats a lot of the teams that were weak to TR that we talked about previously. A Scavalier will eat them alive. What does a Scavalier do to Celesteela? Nothing. Literally
absolutely nothing.
Nothing. So no, I mean, this team's really, it's just a very good team. It all funnels into the Steela. The main thing is that the lack of a couple of those, like the lack of some rain here, a couple of missing type cores, and I'm not sold on Mienshao personally. I actually really like Mienshao. I stand it a lot. I think for 12 points that's a little high, and I don't think it's doing anything that Meowstic isn't really helping you with. So other than just being a nice offensive physical threat, but you have a lot of those. I mean, this team's very physical overall. Which is actually one of my issues with it, which I should have written that down, but Steela can be special or physical. I imagine this will be special Steela more often, which is what it is. Lapras is obviously a special attacker, but like we've been saying, you have to max it. Manectric hits hard, but if you want to Volt Switch into yourself, then you have to lower that special attack a lot. Crobat's physical, Dhelmise physical, Mienshao's physical. Silvally can be either, but because the multi-attack is a physical move and it's 120 base power, everyone runs a physical. So, worth noting.
Yeah, one thing that I think could really, really improve this team, and personally I would think that this move would be very, very good. If I'm Alice, I would look into Alcremie, specifically because Lapras Alcremie used to be insanely good in early metagames, and I think in draft, I think it has a lot of potential, especially if you get Aurora Veil up, and it also completes your core, and you can also use Decorate with a lot of different Pokemon on this team. Could you imagine decorating a Celesteela and then just having to play against that, or decorating a Garchomp? Like that is I just think that's ridiculous.
It's very underexplored. I don't disagree though, because I want a fairy type on this team. Just to have one. Even if it's something like Alcremie, which I think is kind of meh a lot of the time.
It is meh, but
this team is number 4 though. I mean, this is, I think, top, like, I would say top 9 to 1 are all potential finals winning teams. As we get higher, though, I mean, it looks more and more like a finals winning team, and this team looks like one to me. So I think we're going to move on to Winston Weavile, coached by Cobra Poison. I'll cover this one. So
okay, go ahead.
We got in DDF, Dragapult, Hawlucha, Hatterene, Gmax form, Mamoswine, Arcanine, Credilli, Tauros, Frostlass, Togedemaru, Persian. I love this draft a lot. So the terrain synergy is so good on this comp, man. Indeedee is so good next to Hatterene. Like, that is just your TR mode, and it's fine. Like, most of the time, if 2 Pokemon make up an entire mode, I go, I'm a little worried about that. I'm not in this case. I mean, you can literally just follow me, set Trick Room, max hat, and win. Like, simple as that. The Hawlucha benefits from the TR, from the terrain. I actually think Pult benefits a lot from Psychic Terrain specifically. Pult doesn't like a lot of those nonsense Prankster mons typically. Stuff with Will-O-Wisp, stuff like Sucker Punch, things like that. Pult has a hard time with a lot of those kind of things, and Psychic Terrain's really, really good for it. And there's not a lot of priority on the team. Like, if you're looking at it, there's not much of it, and that feels very intentional, which I really like. I really like the fast mode overall. And I like the TR mode. I really like the redirection abilities. This team has both Lightning Rod and Storm Drain. It got Storm Drain for 3 points, which is insane. Credilli's so strong at 3 points. That thing should be like at least 7-ish, maybe higher. And then Togedemaru sitting here with the Lightning Rod, like, lordy. You got dual Intimidate with both the Justified and Sheer Force. There's actually been a couple dual Intimidate teams. This one to me seemed like the one that had the most switch in, switch out potential though. Arcanine switching in and out with the Tauros seemed very viable to me. And I just think the budgeting was fantastic on this team. I mean, just Mamoswine for 14 points, Arcanine for 15, Credilli for 3, Tauros for 5, with the Frostbeth Frostlass, so you can just anchor point and boost Tauros and win that way. I mean, Togedemaru for 7 is insane. That's such a good utility electric type support. Persian for 3, one of the fastest fastest fake outs in the game. I mean, just really powerful. My cons, though, are it's a little overly reliant on Indeedee. All those positive things I said necessitated Psychic Terrain Indeedee. Now, that is not to say it doesn't have other leads and other modes, but, like, you're going to lead Indeedee 90% of the time, and as someone who just had a season where they had to do that, that actually is a problem. And my team was not as reliant on Indeedee as this team seems to be to me on paper. The no Tailwind support is kind of... I only list this not because this team has bad speed tiers, because the speed tiers are great. You got, like, Frostlass, that can weakness policy the Pult and the Lucha, and that's super fast. You got Persian, you got the Pult, as outspeeds everything. The reason I want it is actually more so for that Mamoswine, Arcanine, Credilli, like right there in the middle, because those mons are all so good offensively, and I don't think they're going to super shine in those roles without a bit of that speed control support. So, just something to keep in mind. Dark Ice coverage looks really good into this team. Indeedee's weak to Dark, Dragapult's weak to both Dark and Ice, Lucha's weak to Ice, Hat is neutral to Dark but doesn't like it because it's going to always be next to Indeedee getting a Spadef drop, which isn't good. Mamoswine eats Ice, but Dark is neutral. Like, there's just not like a resist, really. Like, it just seems like you can just kind of click Max Hailstorm, Max Ice into a lot of this team, and it'll be pretty good. The other thing I want to mention is Lucha's damage output is lacking most of the time. I know it's very specific, especially for a 12-point Pokemon, but I really got to emphasize that because, like, Lucha is... I've seen it perform super well, especially the weakness policy set. I actually think the more viable Lucha strat on this team is the Frostlass Lucha proc. I think is going to be much more viable than the Indeedee Terrain proc most of the time. Just because it's an offensive Pokemon with its base attack, it's kind of lacking, and you kind of have to hope you can get a Sword Stance up, which I have found to be difficult for a lot of coaches when they try it. So yeah, I love this team, though. It's super, super strong. I mean, the budgeting is great. I think they got some mons like Credilli, Frostlass, Tauros for points values that are way too low for how good they are. And they just have really good counterplay to a lot of the other teams that we're seeing. I mean, the redirection beats a lot of some of these lower teams, where the fast mode just out-nukes some of the hyper-offense teams. And the utility is almost unmatched compared to a lot of these other teams. Only a few things held this team back from number 1 slot.
Yep, I think you covered everything on this one.
Okay, yeah, nothing to add.
I will say, just real quick before we leave this one, I'm going to call it now. Cobra is winning Justice this season.
Oh,
right? Ladies and
man,
gentlemen, you heard it here first. Destiny's call to arms. It is his destiny to win Justice this season. I promise you.
Lord.
All right, next one. I'm going to let Hunter take this one.
All right, yeah, sweet. I actually really, really like this team. This is Panda's team, the Baltimore Pangorioles. Great name, by the way. He's got Blastoise, G-Max, Clefable, which I think for 28 points, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. He has Marowak, Alola, Articuno, Galar, Duraludon, Rotom-Mow, Miltank, Mr. Mime, Galar. Special place in our hearts, Sock, Audino, and Flygon. Me and Ryan, I've said this before I get to the team, me and Ryan both love Mr. Mime Galar. We call him Cardio, so if I refer him as Cardio, just. So, anyways, the powerful offensive modes next to Clefable are just insane. I mean, there's so many good combinations. Like, you can put the Blastoise next to a Shell Smash, even Marowak next to Clefable outside of Trick Room is just great. You can put Duraludon next to Clefable. You can put a lot of things next to Clefable, and it'll just work. Unaware redirection is just insane, especially in draft. And I think for 14 points, I think that's just insane. Great support with the Mr. Mime, Galar, Sock, Audino, Clefable. Kind of covered that already. The Tailwind and TR modes are both potent. Yes, I agree. The Miltank and Marowak. Sorry, not the Miltank. Just the Marowak. Marowak's great under Trick Room, although it can operate outside of Trick Room if it has the proper support, which I think this team actually has a lot of the time. And one thing that I think a lot of people sleep on is the Rotom Mow utility outside of Dynamax. I think with Ally Switch, Thunderwave, Will-O-Wisp, just you name it, like there's a lot of great utility options with Rotom Mow. I think a lot of people overlook. I think it was Donut who used Rotom Mow outside of Max a lot last year and had a lot of success with it. Or last season, I mean. Just Ally Switch in general just gives them on so much more utility because you have to prepare for it. You have to really understand that they could click Ally Switch at any time and completely mess up your entire strategy and throw off your entire momentum. So for 13 points, I think that's great. Great weakness policy procs across the board. I 100% agree with that. I think a lot of mons on the team benefit from coaching. Not as much as others, but I think Marowak with Sawk is just insane. If you can get that going somehow, some way, I think it's great. Anything on this team really benefits from the defense boost. So the cons. Ryan and I kind of disagree about this a little bit, but I understand where he's coming from. The Miltank for 8 points seems a little unnecessary. I think that having both Miltank and Audino on this team are just a little bit unnecessary. I think you could have gotten something a little bit different. Maybe another physical attacker for the Audino or something like that. I think that, there it is right there. The offense is too specially oriented overall. I agree. 5 of his top 6 are all special, most of the time at least. The outlier there is Marowak, which I mean is just an incredible physical threat. It needs to be piloted very well for success, high skill cap, absolutely. One thing that me and Ryan talked about is, before the call actually, we just wanted to say that this is like a pretty advanced draft style where you kind of forego all of the top tier picks like the Rillaboom, the Dragapult, the Landorus, like those types of picks, for the more solid middle tier picks in rounding out your comp in order to just flourish in any way it wants to. And this team has so many different options, which is exactly why we put it number 2. Specifically, just the Blastoise Clefable, and like the Clefable synergizes with almost anything on this team that you want it to. I mean, you can even put Flygon next to Clefable and click Dragon Dance and have a lot of success with it, you know what I mean? Like, it's very, very hard to stop everything on this team. And I just want to give Panda a lot of credit for that. A first-time coach here in Justice, showing out strong already. So, Ryan, what do you have to say about this team?
Yeah, this team does have a high skill cap. This is not a lot of the time I've seen people say that like a good comp is brain dead, like it just pilots itself and you win, people just can't stop it. And I agree with that, but I have been in a couple of very, very high level leagues, like just a couple of them, and I have seen teams very similarly built to this before, where it's just very like middle picks, but you look at it and you're like, well, I have TR, I have Tailwind, Duraludon ignores redirection from opposing teams. That Blastoise can be support if it wants to be for a random week. Rotom Mow can be offense or support. It can sit there and Will-O-Wisp and Eerie Impulse and everything, your team down. Mr. Mime Galar is crazy good value. Sawk is insane value. Audino is actually a pretty good Trick Room setter. I think Audino was dropped for Pangoro, though. I actually wouldn't mind a TR setter back on this team. I actually like Pangoro here a lot. I think it supplements the physical offense problem we're having. But I still think Miltank is a little unnecessary. I think something else could have been better than that. But like those are nitpicks. Yeah. I actually rated this team number 1 overall. I was the only one I think of the 3 of us who did, but I gave this team the number 1 slot because the more I looked at it, the more I was like, this team feels like it has counterplay to every other team. If you have a weak TR mode, guess what? Marowak is going to eat your soul. You don't have a Tailwind mode, or your speed tiers are kind of lacking, okay, Clefable, Articuno are going to set Tailwind, or Gmax Blastoise is going to click Shell Smash in your face, and you're going to lose. You think, oh, I can handle the Articuno, okay, Mr. Mime will weakness policy proc, or Sawk will coaching the Marowak, or the Flygon, or the whatever.
Right.
Like, the fact is that, like, on a given week, I don't know what 6 mons are coming. And not only do I not know what 6 mons that are coming, I don't know if they're offensive, defensive, utility, anything. And they're totally viable in any of those roles. Like, that is just ridiculous. The problem is that, like we said, this team needs a high skill cap. Like, if Panda plays this team and doesn't really critically think through their prep, they are going to flounder with it super hard. But I have some trust that someone who drafted a team like this can pilot it well, which is why I personally gave it the number 1 slot, even though that is not number 1 overall.
Yep. Destiny, are you alive? Nope. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so Ryan, you want to take this team then?
Yep. Number 1, Burst. All right, let's get to it. I did give Burst second, by the way, just in case you all are wondering. Burst team is Moltres, Galar, Raichu, Diggersby, Comfey, Goodra, Slowbro, Berserker, Blaziken, Araquanid, Tangela, Glaceon. Now, to be fair, if not, I probably should have given this team first. I just really liked Panda's team, and I was a little biased towards liking something that was that weird. So let's go through the pros and cons of this team. Comfey makes everything go burn on it. For 13 points, Comfey is doing a lot of work here. You can weakness policy proc the Goodra, the Moltres, and the Diggersby, and even Slowbro if you want to just be nuts. So 4 of your big offensive threats are benefited from that Draining Kiss Giga Drain combo. The TR mode with the Slowbro, Araquanid, Tangela solid. It's got a little bit of a type weakness overlap, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the budgeting on this team is insanely good. I actually would argue this is one of the best budgeted teams. I think getting value picks like Diggersby at 12, Goodra at 12, Slowbro at 11, Araquanid at 10, Tangela at 7, Glaceon at 2. Like, oh my god, that budgeting is really, really solid. The type cores are covered overall really nicely on this team. I like the offensive threats. I think the Moltres and the Diggersby and the Goodra, Hell Slowbro, Blaziken, Araquanid, those all have really good... those all just hit hard, and they all work really well. I do have a couple issues with this team, though. One of which is the speed tiers. Overall, pretty middling. Raichu is the fastest thing on this team. And I don't love that. Obviously, Moltres can boost with Airstream, but this team is more so relying on bulkier offense and Trick Room than it is speed, because it doesn't really have a lot of it. Most speed tiers on this team are in that, kind of middling sorts of ranges, not faster than base 100, but not slower than base 30, those kind of ranges. The no Tailwind is kind of an issue. You're relying on Airstream for that speed control. Rockfall and opposing Fake Out seems really strong for this team. So, if someone has a Fake Out mon that outspeeds Comfey, that's a problem for this team. And I think Max Rockfall's generally pretty solid into this comp. The resists seem kind of lacking to it. And Blaziken actually feels kind of unnecessary outside of typing. I know that's weird because Burst probably looked at a team that I just piloted to finals that had a Blaziken on it with a Moltres Galar. But the reason I did that was because my Blaziken had redirection. Without redirection, Blaziken tends to falter super hard in draft, in my opinion. I think it needs that redirection support. Those 12 points could have been used a little bit differently, but I like that it completes a type core and gives you a fighting type. It's a really strong team. My main issue is just those speed tiers, but other than that, I was mentioning earlier, a sign of a good team is that it'll pilot itself. This team will pilot itself. You can lead... you can just lead redirection Slowbro. Slowbro can't be taunted, you set Trick Room, you throw an Araquanid, you sweep. You lead Moltres Raichu. Raichu can fake something out or Volt Switch into Moltres and then switch into something else. Get the Airstream boost for Diggersby and Goodra, you sweep. Comfey Goodra lead comes out, you're screwed. That's just so bulky and you have to kill it somehow. It's just really hard to deal with, the options on this team I would describe are overall obvious, but that doesn't mean they're easy. It's really hard to beat everything Burst team has going on here, and not only is it super hard to beat everything on this team, but every single mode he has is insanely viable. This team has, I think, the overall highest viability of any team in terms of just sheer, I have seen this in draft, I know it works. I have seen this in draft, I know it works. I know Araquanid and TR can OHKO everything. I know Moltres Galar can sweep everything. I've seen Goodra Comfey just completely sweep through an entire division. I've just seen a lot of the things on this team work. in tandem with a lot of things. I mean, hell, I was knocking the Blaziken Tangela, great lead. Run a Chlorophyll Tangela, just set Click Rage Powder, Blaziken comes out. Because, like, are you really going to run safety goggles for a Blaziken? I don't think so.
Right.
Like,
I don't think so.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just a really, really, really powerful team. Outside of the speed tiers, I really don't see any issues with it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said before, or like you said before, I mean, sorry. The Comfey just, oh my god, it unlocks so many different modes on this team. It's ridiculous. Comfey Gudra for 25 points. Oh my lord, that is just insane. I feel like I keep saying these different combos that are worth so many points, but when you only have 115 points, I mean, you gotta spend them how you want to. And I think you were spot on when you said you think this is the best budgeted team in the league. I 100% agree. Burst spent 17 points on the Moltres, which I think it's worth every single point, especially if you
100%
have success. I think it's worth every point. And on top of that, you have two of the best support options that Moltres loves. It's the Raichu and the Comfey. Guaranteed, those are the two that you would draft for Moltres. Guaranteed. Unless it's some sort of redirection, it's those two. And on top of that, you unlock. Oh my God, this Comfey! I think Comfey's just great enough to team. And then towards the bottom, I know you don't really care for the Blaziken that much, but like you said, like the Blaziken Tangela, oh my lord, with speed boost.
Yeah.
And you get the max flare off with chlorophyll. I mean, good lord, like that is just that just seems insane on paper.
I don't think you do that every week, but you can, if you have a random week where that looks good, or you lose game 1 and you need another lead, I mean, do it. Like,
right. Absolutely. I think I'm not the biggest fan of the Berserker pick, and I think it's just me not having a lot of experience with it. I think
love it.
Yeah, for 5 points.
I think for 5 points, Berserker is really good here.
And I'm pretty sure it has base 30 speed, right? So
it's good in TR.
I think it's
good in TR. Like, one of the things that's nice that it offers is that it is a TR mon that also gives you utility in TR. So, like, if the opposing Pokemon has some kind of TR mon, it can fake it out. And Steely Spirit is straight up broken, and it will just like kill stuff for you. It's very good. I think Berserker is really solid for 5 points here.
Yeah, and the type cores they're insane. Even though Comfey isn't the best offensive fairy type, it's still just great for utility. I mean, floral healing is ridiculous. And on top of the other things, it gets like ally switch. Like I said about Rotom, like one of the things that is so good about Gudra Comfey is it can proc the Gudra's weakness policy, and it can heal it, and it can ally switch, and it has a lot of different things, and it gets Trick Room. So like you have a lot of different options on this team. And on top of I think the Glaceon is just great here. It's just an alternative proc for a lot of the different Pokemon on this team. For example, like Gudra and Moltres, like with Ishar. I think it's fantastic.
It's
I personally have
just
team number 1.
It's just good.
Go ahead, sorry.
It's just good in general.
It's just good. Like the synergy is just off the charts with this team. Yeah.
Yeah, for 2 points, that's ridiculous. Yeah, like I said, I think the speed tiers is what's really holding me back on this one.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, even with the max airstreams, and I guess you could run Nuzzle on Raichu, but I mean it's kind of hit or miss sometimes. So, anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it for this team. Destiny, are you live? Listen, I may as well ask, right?
Right, yeah, it's worth asking. So that'll be all for our PRs for this season, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. This is, I'm sure, going to be a long video. Thank you for anyone who stuck through to the end and listened to us ramble on and on. This was a pleasure to do. These PRs are really fun. The teams are so strong. I could see anyone winning. And I think a couple of those teams with a couple of those transaction recommendations, you don't obviously have to take them. But I would at least toss the idea around in your head of whether you're comfortable with something that we suggested. Because I think that with a few of those slight improvements, a lot of these teams suddenly really start competing with some of the big boy teams, I think. So that's all I really have to say. Thanks for having me on. Hunter, thanks for joining. Destiny,
no problem.
Thanks for being
Hey,
on.
like this video right now. Subscribe to my man Ryan. Subscribe to my man Hunter. And subscribe to TGU. We're going to bring you some more content at some point in the future. Not right now, because I'm going to sleep after I eat my ass. But that's been all for these PRs, guys.
All right.
Have a great night.
Have a great night, everybody.
Peace.